Gon vs Hisoka. When a friend says they've never seen anime, I show them this fight. This was the exact moment that I fell in love with Hunter x Hunter. Up until this fight, I really liked Hunter x Hunter, and it was pretty cool, but this is where the commitment was made to see it through to the end. This fight was especially well done in the 2011 anime with inspired cinematography and some of the best sound design that I have ever heard in a fight period. It's crazy, but like the choice of where to use sound effects and where to take advantage of silence gives us a real like hold your breath kind of moment. And Hunter x Hunter is packed with fights that are permanently burned into my mind brain. Kurapika vs Uzumaki, Netero vs Meruem, and Chrollo vs Hisoka in the manga, to name but a few. But I'm not interested in them today. I've talked about those fights to death, and I will probably continue to talk about those fights to death until the channel ends. But what if I told you that you could remove all of those key battles from Hunter x Hunter and the series would still serve as a masterclass of fictional combat? Because you can. Almost every fight in Hunter x Hunter is absurdly well crafted. Designed a lot less to showcase, stunning punch fighting, but intended more to explore certain ideas. So I asked all of you in the community section what your favorite fights in the series were, and I have picked the most obscure to highlight. By the way, if you want to know how to join these community sections and be featured in these videos, then you just need to join our association by subscribing to the channel. It's just one button, and I promise all of the glorious Hunter-based content in return. But let's get into it. Gon vs Genthru is highly underrated. I agree, even though I'm admittedly one of the people who tends to underrate it. This is one of the exceedingly rare coin flip fights in Hunter x Hunter. Most battles in the series are very lopsided with outcomes determined from the very beginning, but this one really could have gone either way. Because Gon have a plan, but it could have, and actually it did, go horribly wrong. I think this fight is a well-earned exhale for Gon though, because at this point Gon had been training and generally been tossed around for about 200 chapters, so it was pretty amazing to finally get to see our protagonist step up and take on an exam more suited to his particular level. It's very much a case of exceptionally talented amateur versus more standardly talented veteran. And who prevails? Experience or raw talent? Although to be fair to Gon, it wasn't quite as simple as that. This fight is likely underrated because of Genthru. He's one of the less memorable villains in the series, and so this fight very much gets dropped to the bottom of the barrel in favor of other, much more appealing bouts. But the fact that Genthru is here almost doesn't matter, because this fight is all about Gon. It showcases all of his strengths, including intellect, instinct, and most impressively, the willpower to continue fighting after his arm has been completely blown off. Gon has to overcome the problem that he's basic. His rock technique only works in a very straightforward situation. So this fight is less about physicality and more about tactics and positioning. Everything Gon does is in service of trapping Genthru within Gon's range. And to that end, he uses environments, he uses cards, and like any masterful chess player, Gon makes sacrifices to ensure victory. I mean, if Genthru were a more meatsome villain, then this would be a fight that no one would ever shut up about. It's simply that brilliant. Gon at his absolute finest for the first and arguably last time in the series. Even though Killua isn't my favorite character, I love when he finally removes Illumi's needle and smokes the rabbit ant. So this is actually a very similar situation to Genthru. This fight is underrated because of the opponent. Rammot, again, not one of the more classically memorable villains of Hunter x Hunter, but also he's completely irrelevant because this isn't actually Killua versus Rammot. It's more like Killua versus Killua, or even Killua versus Illumi to some degree. Rammot is just the inciting force that makes Killua finally confront himself. And the best part of the fight is that it pays off Killua's entire character arc up until this point. It retroactively explains Illumi's hypnotic spell from the Hunter exam, as well as Killua's careful instinct through the series. But it also mixes in the ominous warning given to Killua by Bisky, and it all plays out in the context of Killua's desperate desire to protect bestest buddy Gon, while he's on a lovely date with a woman who should potentially be arrested and charged with grooming because Gon is 12. But that doesn't matter because Killua is still here to support his best friend and his cougally inclined tendencies. I mean, that aside, this is what solidified Killua as my favorite character. Something I really love is the moment after ripping the needle out of his head, because from that point on, Killua is overcome with an emotion. I want to say it's happiness, but I also think that's underselling it, because this is the moment where Killua's life suddenly makes sense to him. He's figured it out, and there's this wave of relief, I suppose. Even though he's mid-combat, it doesn't matter because finally everything is clear and under control, which Killua then goes on to demonstrate by instantly decapitating Rammot, going on to prove that his presence there was never the true fight. Rammot was a narrative tool, a pair of story tweezers to remove a needle. But like a really good pair of tweezers, solid craftsmanship that definitely got the job done. Shoot versus Youpi is so underrated, no one talks about it. I actually once considered making a whole video on Shoot versus Youpi, and I still kind of am because it is a genuinely brilliant fight. Unfortunately, it happens to feature two characters who I would describe as of lesser prestige when one is looking for something to click on, so I don't know how I'd effectively sell it as a thumbnail. But look, that's not your problem. We are here to talk about a man with 2 legs versus an ant with many arms. I honestly didn't really care for Shoot too much before this conflict, and to this day I still think that of the extermination team, he's a little bit criminally underexplored. But with that said, this fight sets the tone for the palace invasion very well, specifically by inverting the skills and the needs of each faction. Shoot needing to become more animalistic and relying on instinct, as opposed to being crushed by his severe analysis paralysis. Meanwhile, on the other side, you've got Youpi, who serves as a giant ball of instinct, needing to actually learn to incorporate some sort of thought into his actions. I really love the moment where Shoot covers his eye. And then the answer as to why he does it is just, I don't know. No reason, no clear reason, but that epitomizes instinct. You can't always assign a logical reason for action in these kind of situations. There's some speculation that even though Shoot didn't purposely do this, his actions resulted in a Nen restriction that allowed him to push his abilities further than ever before. Or another idea proposed is that removing depth allowed Shoot to view the world in a much more simple and digestible way. I don't know how much I subscribe to that because depth is pretty important. But also there's the thought that this was just an objectively bad thing to do. It gave Shoot no physical or aura benefit whatsoever, but what it did give him was pure confidence. Even if he made the wrong decision, Shoot made that wrong decision with confidence, which was the only thing that allowed him to fight against Youpi for as long as he did, which to be clear wasn't very long, not very long at all, like a couple of minutes at most. But look, the length doesn't matter because Shoot had the girth to back it up. He achieved more in those few minutes than he had previously throughout his entire life. And seeing this evolution from self-loathing coward to brave, confident combatant was a glorious thing to watch. And not only is this fight underrated, but Shoot is heavily underrated as a character. You really could analyze this fight panel by panel and word for word. There's a lot in it. Togashi did what Togashi does and hyper-focused on an idea and then executed it flawlessly. 100% Zoldycks versus Chrollo. What I would call the first exhibition of a professional hunter fight. So despite the fact that neither Zoldycks nor Chrollo are hunters, I agree with that statement. Essentially, this is the first moment where we get a glimpse of the power ceiling of Hunter x Hunter, which comes at a very interesting time because the previous arc, Heaven's Arena, was more or less a Nen tutorial. It took a lot of meticulous time to introduce us to the very basics, which is juxtaposed very starkly against York New City, where we see those basics and more applied in the hands of world-class Nen users. And it's definitely more than that, because they were doing stuff in this fight that we weren't even aware of at this point, like Chrollo's ability. We don't find out how it actually works until long after this fight happens. So there's a certain degree of awe I have watching Xeno Zoldyck swiftly unravel Chrollo's ability, and even though he doesn't understand the exact specifics, he still infers enough to hard counter it. And I really like that we didn't get the standard shonen thing of Xeno, dissecting and then explaining Chrollo's power verbally to us as the readers. Or even worse, Chrollo having some kind of inner monologue explaining how Skill Hunter works and going, cool, I hope he doesn't do that because my condition is this. No, there's like none of that. Instead, Togashi dumps the explanation on a Slater on a cover page, and it turns out, Xeno was pretty damn on the mark. More so than anything else though, this is the fight that defines the entire Zoldyck family, which can be summarized in one word, that word being professional. They were hired to kill Chrollo, and in the space of mere minutes, they came up with a plan to do just that. One of the world's best Nen users just snuffed out in no time at all. I mean, yes, it was likely going to cost Xeno's life to enact it, but that shows the Zoldyck commitment to the business. They accepted the contract and will carry it out no matter what the cost. And it's fantastic that this fight only ends because another business transaction was completed. And then there's the revelation that all three of them knew that this side job existed and was likely going to render this job irrelevant, and yet Xeno and Silver still gave this job the utmost professionalism. Zoldyck customer service is so far off the charts that it probably resides on the Dark Continent, although that's why they cost the GDP of a small nation to hire, because they are the best of the best, and this fight tells us everything that we need to know about that family. With that said, I'd still like to know more, a lot more. Every fight with Hisoka in it. Excellent, that's wonderfully specific. So I'm going to take the liberty of choosing Hisoka's most obscure fight. So you may remember this, or you may not. It's one of the earliest fights in Hunter x Hunter where Hisoka faces a character named Togari in Trick Tower. Togari being an examiner from the 286 Hunter exam who Hisoka tried to kill and in fact delivered Togari's visible facial scars. This guy is the whole reason why Hisoka is even part of Gon's exam. Hisoka was supposed to pass last year, but he went and attacked an examiner, which is a great way of building Hisoka's character. The idea that he is both so powerful and gives so little shits about examiners shows that Hisoka is something very, very special, particularly with how quickly he dismissed Togari, going on to decapitate him, which is actually the second decapitation that we've encountered in this video. But it builds a very solid foundation of fear for Hisoka, one that is very present in future events like say Gon versus Hisoka, one of my favorite fights in Heaven's Arena. We know that Gon has no chance in that fight, no chance whatsoever, and we, or at least I, feel genuine fear for him. And a lot of that is in great part due to this early demonstration. But let's also stop and think about this for a bit. It's not apparent when you're first watching it or reading it, but Hisoka killed not only a licensed hunter, but an examiner, meaning that Togari was a Nen user and a pretty damn good one in theory. I will say that this is a really solid argument for the theory that Nen didn't exist in early Hunter x Hunter, because this fight features not a single drop of implied aura use, at least not from Togari anyway. Could maybe argue that Hisoka is using enhancement when he catches the blades, but Togari's got nothing. Also, fun fact, in the 1999 version, they demote Togari from an examiner to a participant because his dialogue states, "I didn't come here this year to pass the exam." Which when I saw that, I was like, good, you shouldn't have. You don't need to. You're a licensed hunter, you fool. And it's an example of a change the 1999 anime did that I think actually makes the series make more sense in retrospect. Although they do have this hilarious moment where Togari is juggling his blades, which looks so embarrassing and not at all intimidating when looped as they do. So like, look, I'm juggling my blades. I don't know what that was. 2011 definitely did a better job of making him look like an actual threat, but all three series did a fantastic job of having this fight serve Hisoka. Without this conflict, Hisoka would be missing an integral building block, making this a highly underrated fight. And let me know in the comments, if it wasn't in this video, what do you think is the most underrated fight in Hunter x Hunter?